Now, this is the time I consider this kind of mentor-pupil stage of the show. Let's bring on Joel Klatt, the voice of college football for Fox Sports. Joel Klatt, let's bring him on. The only guest with the courage to come in studio. Great to see you.
Mentor-pupil?
Well, I
Really?
I like to impart wisdom on kids, and I think this is an opportunity for you to learn a little from Uncle Colin. So let's start with this before we get into the...
Well, real quick, you haven't been on a cross-country flight. Apparently, you're not yourself without a couple of days, no cocktails, right? I mean, my goodness. By the way, can I push back just a moment on what you were talking about there with LeBron?
Yeah.
And it's not even just LeBron specific. I just think it's this, you're very into kind of feeling yourself and this puffing your chest out. I love it when Rodgers talks back and LeBron talks back and all this different stuff. Yeah. Just at home, think about this for a moment. Those people that hate you don't want to hear what you have to say. Those people that love you regardless, they don't need to hear what you have to say. The only way that your words are impactful is if you're respected, right? And I'm not saying he's not respected. I'm just saying, like, throwing it out there just to get favor with the people that love you is never going to be the way to generate any impactful meaning with your words. So there you go.
Well, I like to puff the chest once.
I bet you do. I bet you do.
Speaking of puffing the chest, where is the state of Texas and Tom Herman today? Oof. They are wildly entertaining, and there is something wrong on that. They're 18-12 in the Big 12.
Yeah, what's fascinating to me is that they're entertaining right now under Herman, kind of like a car crash is entertaining, right? Because you can't take it. It's like a beautiful mess. And you can't take your eyes off it, and it is, and that's really frustrating for that fan base, and the fashion in which they continue to go out there and lose games and play, the sloppiness, the lack of execution, that's wearing on people down there, in particular with where their roster is. And I gave you the stats last week. They had, coming into the season, 30 players with starts. That's so many guys. I mean, that's such an experienced roster. They have a quarterback that's now started 37 games. They've got the fifth most talented roster in all of college football, and they're out there getting punts blocked and having personal foul calls.
So that's just coaching to me.
It's very sloppy, and it's wearing very thin, in particular in a year in which a lot of people thought this was going to be the year for Texas, that they could dethrone Oklahoma, not only in Red River, but potentially for the Big 12 championship. So even in a COVID year, I got to tell you, that game Saturday was not good for the outlook of the future of that staff, in particular Tom Herman. And just a side note, and this is what I think gets lost a lot of times when we discuss things like this. People are, it's usually black or white. Oh, all or nothing. He's gone. He's not gone. A lot of it has to do with the nuance and the context of losses. And in the context of the last two losses for Texas, Chris Del Conte is Tom Herman's boss. He's the athletic director at Texas. Guess where he came from?
Where?
TCU. That's who they just lost to. That doesn't sit well with a guy who just left TCU to go to Texas because he thought it was bigger, it was better, I can do more things at Texas. And then you sit there and you watch TCU beat your club in a year in which they're supposed to be really good. That doesn't sit well with the decision maker. And then the context of the loss to OU, with OU and their roster where it's at, and I explained this last week, with the rebuild that OU is clearly under, that was a devastating loss for Texas. Now, we'll see what happens with the future of the season and how they can get back to some semblance of quality play. But, even in a COVID year, watch out down there in Austin.
So I was, it's funny about the SEC. The defenses aren't so hot in the SEC either.
Not anymore. My goodness.
So it is interesting what in Alabama's defense, this is not.
They got torched by Ole Miss.
Not a special defense. I watched it. It's not as good up front. It's not quite as fast. It's just not, it doesn't make you as uncomfortable as a quarterback. Alabama always makes you uncomfortable. It's just not quite as. So here's my question.
What if it's not the defense's fault?
What are you saying? The coach.
I'm just saying, what if it's not specifically any of these defenses? What if it's the evolution of offense has nullified the effect of even great defenses? Because great defenses all have one thing in common, and that is that they are great at the defensive line position, right? They win the line of scrimmage, and then it makes you struggle offensively for the rest of the game. And the spread offense, Colin, has totally neutralized the effect of the defensive line. Because the modern offense, and now I think it's really permeated throughout college football, and you've got some great coordinators out there. But what you're seeing right now is the neutralization of great front seven players by the spread offense, because the spread offense, if run and executed correctly, is always right. You've always heard the old adage in baseball that, like, great pitching always beats great hitting, right? Well, great offense always beats great defense in the modern college football because the spread offense neutralizes the numbers. There's always options available. You cannot cover the amount of options that the spread offense presents to you. And I think that's why you're starting to see some of these teams struggle. The only way that you can get past that as a defense is if you have great man-to-man corners. That's the only thing. It's not even defensive tackles anymore, although those are a great plus. I'm not saying that you don't have to have those. I'm just saying that if you don't have great corners that can just lock down wide receivers and take away that option because they're better man-on-man, then you're going to struggle as a defense.
Oh. So let me talk about this Trevor Lawrence thing. So I said this week, everybody's saying, what teams will take Trevor Lawrence in the draft?
Okay.
And I said, let's turn the telescope around. What teams won't? And I put the top 15 teams in the draft today, the draft order in the draft.
We know that is more fascinating. That's a great question.
So the Bengals, they love Burrow, and the Chargers love Justin Herbert. The
we were wrong on Herbert, you and I.
No, I think you were wrong.
We were wrong on Herbert.
Tape.
Congratulations on Herbert.
Giants would absolutely take him. Absolutely, Atlanta's moving off 36-year-old. They're just not going to move off him yet because of cap space. Jets would take him. Chargers won't. Washington would. Jags would. Vikings would. If I don't see Tua,
That's the interesting one. I was looking at the Dolphins. I don't know about
if
Dolphins.
I see Tua for 8 games and I'm like, well, Burrow and Herbert are having no problems with this league, and he is choppy, do I consider it? Lions would. Broncos would. I love Wentz, but you could get a first-round pick for Wentz.
I just don't think that the Eagles are going to be bad enough to get up there.
I know the Bengals won't. 49ers, damn right they would. And even New England, I think they're going to sign Cam to a 2-year deal. They would take it.
New England would.
So my takeaway is with Trevor Lawrence, I look around this league, and I'm not sure I counted 7 teams that wouldn't take him. Seattle, Green Bay, Kansas City.
Yeah, that's fascinating right there. And you know what's fascinating to me is then how valuable do the pieces become that he's replacing? How valuable does a Daniel Jones become, or a Matt Ryan to a roster that's ready to win right now, or a Darnold?
This was a prime example. So if you're the Jets, the Colts are a quarterback away. They have the line. They have the defense. All the analytics. They've got the running back. They got the coach. They got the GM. They had Jacoby Brissett and Phillip Rivers. They can't even roll out. Sam Darnold to Indianapolis.
Well, I mean, maybe any of those guys, right? Daniel Jones might fit in Indianapolis.
He can move. So
you're absolutely. I think Indy is the most ready to win right now.
Absolutely.
You know, of a lot of those teams. Maybe Matt Ryan, although I don't know if they want an immobile guy, but he could be listen, if I'm the 49ers and I'm like, I'm sorry, wait, Matt Ryan could be available? That's a team that I would, if I was Matt Ryan, I would really look at, because Matt Ryan has had success in that West Coast offense before with Kyle Shanahan when they went to a Super Bowl and probably should have beat the Patriots. That would fit right there. So that's another interesting piece. And by the way, I don't want to get just caught up in like Lawrence is the only prized possession. I think that you might have the same exact discussion about Justin Fields with all those teams.
Ohio State quarterback.
And maybe Trey Lance, the North Dakota State kid, who is phenomenal, by the way. He's only going to play 1 game. He already played it a couple of weeks ago, but he's going to have that type of acumen coming into the NFL, in particular with what the guys have done that have come from North Dakota State. So this is going to be a fascinating NFL draft this spring, in particular at the quarterback position, because there's going to be, like you said, 14, 15 teams that are going to have to make a decision.
Okay, so let's talk about Justin Herbert. Now, I had said, we had tape. I had said about Herbert.
This is such a lie.
I said about
mentors.
Herbert.
Mentors don't lie. Please tell the truth.
I said about Herbert. I said after the Rose Bowl, I said, you know who he reminds me of? A lesser Trevor Lawrence. Big, smart, tall, strong, confident, can run. You did not like him at all. You thought he was just a...
I was victim of...
Victim, okay.
Seeing, and this by the way, this happens to GMs and scouts all the time.
All right.
And I talked to him about this, and I fell hook, line, and sinker. I had him last year live at USC, and I wasn't impressed. And so I was like, and it stuck with me. It clouded my ability to evaluate what he was. And then, to be quite honest with you, I didn't love Oregon's offense. He was a C-thrower. He waited to see guys open. He didn't anticipate a lot. So I was like, this is not going to quite translate to the league. And it's totally flipped. He's out there anticipating windows, throwing beautiful balls down the field. His arm has always been very special. And then he's showing that athleticism like you're showing right here, him getting out of the pocket, the ability to have the arm strength to continue to get the ball down into tight windows. He has been a huge bright spot, I think, in the NFL, and a guy that the Chargers have got to be elated about in terms of their future at the quarterback position. I was, by the way, I'll always do this. Colin won't. I was dead wrong on Herbert, and happy to say that because I'm really glad he's having success.
Well, I won't say that because after the Rose Bowl, he torched
is that right?
Wisconsin.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, we have tape of it. We couldn't find it this morning, but we had tape of it. Okay, so this is interesting. Here's your top 10 as Clemson, Ohio State, Bama, Georgia, blah, 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 all that stuff. You have Notre Dame at 5.
Yeah.
Now, there's a big gap in the world between the top 4 teams in college football, and about 5 or 6 are good teams. I've seen Washington go to this thing and can't move the ball against Alabama.
Sure.
When I say Notre Dame, when I hear those first 4, I'm like, yep. And then I hear Notre Dame, and I'm like, yeah, it's a different group of people.
I totally agree with you, and that's why when I'm doing this top 10,
it's really a top
after
4.
4, you go like that. You write the top 4 in, and really, everyone's going to be like, oh, how's Bama behind? Who cares, right? They're the top 4, like clearly.
So Notre
the top
Dame
4.
can't beat any of those teams.
Not this week. I don't know about the by the end of the year or not, but the college football playoff. You could make a strong argument has hurt the sport. Because 100%.
Why?
100% because it's a self-perpetuating cycle that the most quality players go to the only teams that go to the playoff, and then those teams go back to the playoff and then get the best players, and then they go back to the playoff and then they get the best players and go back. Did you know that if you took Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, and Oklahoma, they've made 17 college football playoff appearances? 17. That's really good, right? Excellence. We love to celebrate excellence. The rest of the country combined has 7 appearances. Combined. Right, so the separation of the classes has become more significant due to the playoff than before the playoff, and I would make an argument that, to be honest, it's made our industry lazy because everything outside of the top 4 is like, well, that's no good. So you were about to go down the road. It's like, can Notre Dame beat those? Oh, no, who cares, right? Well, it's not black and white like that because if I'm a Notre Dame fan, let's just put this into perspective right now. Did you know Notre Dame is trying to do this season something that they've never done in their history? Do you know what it is?
What?
Win 10 or more games in 4 consecutive seasons.
Wow.
They've never done that in their history.
Is that right?
They've never done it in their history.
Even when they had a guy on a horse in the backfield.
That's partly because they were only playing like 7 and 8 games there in that part of their history. But you've got Ohio State doing it, year over year. Alabama doing it year over year. Mac Brown at Texas did it year over year over year. And they have never gone 4 straight seasons with 10 or more wins. So what Brian Kelly is actually doing at Notre Dame is historically good for them. And I'm not saying that they're a tier below. And yes, they want to compete for and potentially win a national championship. But the playoff has made commentary a bit lazy because we don't acknowledge what's going on in some of these programs. Did you know that Miami has only won 10 or more games since going to the ACC one time? No one knows that, right? No one knows that. One time since leaving the Big Ten, they won 10 or more games. So what Manny Diaz is trying to do to get them to compete at the Clemson level is really, really tough. And yet they don't play well, and we want to throw them away. Again, your take on like top 4 and then everybody else, yes, it's absolutely true. And it's partly due to the fact that the playoff, stopping where it stops, has hurt college football in general.
Or I like to talk about winners. Hey, you know what made me think of a game? I'm going to do this game next week. It's one of my favorite games.
Which one?
Drives
the almost upset of the week?
No.
Is it coming back?
It drives people crazy. I have a theory that if you take geography, history, budgets, recruiting base, all that stuff, and you have a 12-game schedule as the base of it.
Okay.
There's a number for every college team.
I totally agree with that.
So you take out your best coach ever, Washington, Don James, can't count him.
Right.
You take out your worst coach ever, Washington, I won't bludgeon him, but take him out. And there's a number for Washington on a 12-game schedule to win. And I always argued with my friends in Seattle, it's 8.5 to 9. You think it's 11?
I would totally agree with that.
Because there's no players up there. So it's
I believe
8.
the unrealistic expectations of individual fan bases
so let's do
are out of control.
Only a minute left. I'm going to give you the school on a 12-game schedule. There's only.
All right, you're putting me on the.
3,
I'm giving you the number.
And
you
can do a half.
Okay.
There's only like 4 11.5s. Alabama,
11.5.
Ohio State,
11.
USC,
10.
So that's very interesting. So, because Iowa's put them at 11 because the lack of commitment from everybody else out west.
But they have their valleys are lower than the Ohio States or the Alabamas in the world. Alabama very rarely, if ever, goes down. And when they go down, it's very quick. Whereas USC will hit troughs, and it lasts for a while. Heck, they're in a trough right now.
All right. Let me give you another one. Oregon.
8.5.
I'd go 8. Wisconsin.
10.5.
Oh, come on. More than USC.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord. There's no players.
They're more consistent than USC.
But that's because they've had unbelievable coaching streaks. Barry Alvarez. I mean, they've had great coaches.
Wisconsin, if you're asking me about which team, fan base, administration knows themselves better than anybody else in the country, it's Wisconsin. They understand who they are, how they have success, why they have success, and that's why they do have success year over year over year.
They wear in the summer Birkenstocks with socks. That's not a 10.5.
I mean, so does Oregon, and I can't.
That's
hold
right,
that
and you had
them.
Oregon as at 8.5.
Yeah, but Oregon was good for like a blink of an eye.
All right, well, we'll play this game next week. We got a lot of commercials. This show has a lot of commercials because it's very popular.
I'm sure it does. It's very popular, I've heard. You know who tells me? The host ad nauseum.
That was funny. Got one off finally. Very good. All right, well, I got Will Blackman around the corner. I'm going to take a break. We just blew right through that segment. All poor advertisers had to suffer. We don't have time for you. It's The Herd. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.